Okay, so we're going to start our new project here, and we're going to do it in pieces. The first thing we're going to work on is the aliens. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to delete this sprite here because I don't want this guy. So I'm going to click on this with 2 fingers on the mouse pad, and one of the options is going to be delete. So now I have no sprites at all, and I'm going to choose a new sprite, and what I'm going to choose is the spaceship. And some of the sprites automatically come with animation, which is very useful. So this is one of the ones that comes with animation. Where is the spaceship? Spaceship. I'm sure I went by it. There it is, spaceship. So I'm going to choose rocket ship, and I'm going to select it. And a few things to note. First off, it's way too big. So I'm going to change its size from this size to about 50%. So I'm going to go here, double click on that until it's all highlighted, and change it to 50%. Next thing is I want it oriented so that it's pointing to the right. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to click on this a few times until it's pointed exactly to the right. This will move the object 15 degrees to the right every time. I could just change it to 90. In fact, that'll be easier. So I'm going to turn 90 degrees to the right. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move it, just drag it over to here. Okay? And if I drag it too far, it'll snap back to where it was. But if I drag it just enough, it'll stay right there. Let's see how far I can drag it. Okay, perfect. So that's where my spaceships are going to start. And what I want is I want to have a series of spaceships fly across the screen and then delete. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to realize that this is the parent. And I need to make a bunch of clones of the parent. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my parent. I'm going to go to control, and actually I'm sorry, I'm going to go to events. I always mix this up. And I'm going to say when green flag is clicked, please forever make clones of myself. Now it's important that I put in a delay here, because if you suddenly make clones forever, you'll kind of crash the program, because Scratch only allows you to make 300 clones. So I'm going to put a delay in here, and it's going to be a random delay. So I'm going to say, please, every 1 to 4 seconds, let's say, I'll probably change these numbers later, but every 1 to 4 seconds, please make a clone of myself. So under control, down here, it says create a clone of myself. So far, so good. Now, when I start as a clone, I want to do a few things. First thing I want to do is I want to switch from costume to costume to costume. So if you look at this object, it has all of these costumes here. And the first costume looks like this, then this. So it kind of spins. Except I don't like this one because it's bigger than the other ones, I've noticed. So it kind of looks a little bit bizarre if you include this costume. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this costume. I'm going to delete costume 5. So, but these 4 costumes, it actually looks like a great little animation of spinning and rocket firing and not firing and stuff like that. So it's really cool. So going back to my code, what I'm going to say is when I start as a clone, forever, switch to the next costume. So I'm going to put the forever here, and switching costumes is in looks, and I'm going to say next costume. So let's just see what happens if I hit go. So every 1 to 4 seconds, a new clone is created, and you can sort of see it jiggling here. That's because the new clone is being created directly underneath the parent. All right, so the other thing I need it to do is I need it to fly along. So when I start as a new clone, I always put these under their own little hats so I can keep track of, I call these things hats. I can keep track of what's happening. Let's see, when I start as a clone, this one is going to be the flying one. So when I start as a clone, first thing I want it to do is I want it to go to a random position over here. So I want it to be kind of either way up here or way down here. So I'm going to say motion, go to, or set X, I should say. Set X to, set Y, because Y is up and down. Set Y to, this is 180 at the very top. This is negative 180 at the very bottom. I don't want them to be all the way at the bottom. I want them to be kind of around here. So I'm going to say set y to a random number between positive 180 and I'll call it negative 120. And let's just see what happens when I hit go now. So when I start as a clone, they're going to show up at different spots along here. And you can see them spinning now. They spin a little bit too fast for me, I notice. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to, instead of have it go immediately to the next costume, I'm going to put a little delay in here too. So I'll say wait, how about 1/10 of a second before you switch to the next costume. So here we go. I like to test things as I go. I like to see what happens. All right, good. That's spinning. Nice. Okay. Now, the last thing I need them to do is I need them to slide across the screen. So when I start as a clone, set Y to, and then I want them to move. So I'm going to go to motion, and I'm going to say glide to, glide to, oh, hi, Snowy. Okay, so glide to, oh, I want them to be kind of random, right? So I want them to glide to a random spot. Here's what I do know, is I want the X to always be 250, because 250 is on this side. So I want them to glide all the way over to that edge. So I'm going to say 250, and then Y, I'll again use this same random number. So I'm going to go to here and take the random number and go 180 to negative 120. 180 to negative 120. So yeah, that's the Y. And I want them to have different speeds. So if I say that they all glide 1 second, then they're all going to go really fast, because in 1 second they're going to cross the screen, and that's way too fast anyway. So what I should do is I should probably say pick random. I'm gonna say that the fastest ones take 5 seconds to get across, and the slowest ones take 10 seconds to get across. All right, so glide 5 to 10 seconds to that spot, and then finally when they get to that spot over here, I'd like them to delete. So I'm going to go to Control, and I'm going to delete this clone. Right? Okay, so here we go. We've got our spaceships. They're going to random positions at the other side at random speeds. When they get to the end, they delete. They change their costumes, which is kind of nice. And really cool. And I've got my parent here. The one thing I don't like about this whole thing is my parent is still sitting here almost like it's waiting to do something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say hide the parent. So I'm going to go to looks and hide the parent. The parent's going to be like always hidden. Now the problem with doing that is if I always hide the parent, then all of the clones will also be hidden, I believe. None of them will show up. Right, because the clones adopt the same characteristics as the parent. So since the parent is hidden, all the clones are hidden. So I need to go here to looks and put a show here. So now they will in fact show up, they'll spin, they'll go to the edge, and they'll delete. So that's the first part of the project, is making the little alien ships. By the way, I already see one problem, which is they're starting a little bit too low for my taste, and they go too low for my taste. So we better change this a little bit. We better say that they have to, well, no, we'll keep it. Okay, so that's the first step, is to make the little aliens appear and go across the screen. Pretty cool, right? Now, if I want to turn this off for any reason, well, don't worry about that, but it works. So I'm also going to label my project now, alien thingy. Okay, and although that's not really a good name, your name should be ones that you remember what they are. So anti-alien system, and I'm going to go ahead and save it. Save now. So I've got my project. By the way, you have to be signed in for things to save. But I've got my aliens going across the screen. That is step 1.